Jeremy Morgan, thank you so much for joining me today on the Daily Check-In. Before we get to the topic at hand, it is the Daily Check-In, so I want to check in with you. How you doing, buddy? What's going on?
I'm doing well, staying busy. Just jumped into a new role last year and kind of figuring out as I go how that works and having a ton of fun with it, though. So it's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all have had that feeling where you're jumping to a new role. You're not entirely certain that you're prepared for it, but you just forge ahead and you sort of fake it till you make it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So today's topic is the best career advice you ever got. And before we talk about that, why don't you tell the good folks out there a little bit about yourself and your career path so far?
Okay. So right now I'm working for Pluralsight, working in our content division. So creating content like writing, videos, things like that, working on the podcast, and doing a lot of content creation around technical stuff. And my background, even immediately before Pluralsight, was as a consultant, and I've been a software engineer, architect, DevOps engineer, even though I despise the term DevOps in any job role, but that was my job role for many years. So
Wow.
so very technical, and then at some point last year, I wasn't paid to write code anymore, and so now I'm paid to write about code, and I still write code. I mean, of course.
Okay, so it sounds like you've been through a few shifts in your life where maybe you were full-time somewhere as a software engineer, and then you did the consulting thing, and you moved to Pluralsight to create content and still do, technical stuff, because I think you're like me. You always want to keep your hands in the tech a little bit,
Oh,
right?
Yeah, can't get me out of it, for sure.
So,
Oh, go
when
ahead.
you think about all these different shifts in your career, I'm sure you got some advice or you had some mentorship during that period. I'm wondering if you can pick out one or two instances in your career where someone did something or said something that you took as advice that really changed the trajectory of your career.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, in the very beginning, one thing I could think that stands out. So in the very beginning, I was a network engineer doing network administration, things like that. And this boss at this company, he was a director of software engineering. He pulled me into a role, basically saw a book on my desk. And he said, "Hey, do you know PHP?" And I'm like, "Well, you can see in the book where I'm at. And do you want to be a software developer?" And I'm like, "Sure, that sounds cool." And so he took me in for an interview, and things went pretty well. And we were there for probably 2 hours in this interview. And one of the things I said, is like, I want to be the best at what I do. And I'm like, I'll sweep the floors in this place for you if I have to. And these floors will be clean, but I really want to advance. And later, after he hired me for the job, and then months later down the road, he told me, he's like, the only thing I paid attention to in your interview was the fact that you said you would sweep the floors in this place and make them clean. He's like, everything else, you didn't really know what you were talking about. Like, he had me doing stuff on a whiteboard, all this stuff that I thought was so important. And then later he told me, he goes, that one thing was just the fact that you said you would sweep the floors and that they would be clean. He's like, that's the kind of attitude that I need on my team. And so it all came down to 30 seconds in an interview.
Wow. Wow.
And so, yeah,
You
it
would
was
think
like,
that
just that,
minute portion, that was the thing that really, but I guess one of the things that I've heard and other people have mentioned during these talks is you have to find a way to stand out a little bit from the other people. And I guess
yeah.
without telling you directly to do something to stand out, you did something to stand out from other people who were lined up for that position.
Yeah. And I've had a lot of mentors over the years. And one mentor of mine, he was really good. He was really high up at Intel, and he guided my career a lot. And so I took some of the things that he had told me, I took some of the things from other people, and I come up with 3 H's that I would give to people when I became a tech leader. And the first one is stay hungry, which comes back to Brian, who said, I hired you based on saying you would sweep the floors. So stay hungry, always be looking for the next opportunity, looking to improve yourself, that kind of thing. The second H is stay honest, because, if you're not honest, you're not going to make it. Everyone knows how trust works, it takes
Hmm.
years to get it, minutes to lose it.
Yeah.
So just stay honest, when you mess up. say, hey, I messed up. And then the last H is stay humble. So there's two different approaches you can go in tech, and this really applies like in the middle of your career, I would say. Once you get a few wins under your belt, you start doing really well. So if you go into a team, as a team member or consultant or whatever, and you're like, I'm the best there ever was, I'm a tech god, you all should just, bow down before me. When you mess up, and you will mess up, the trust is gone at that point.
Right.
And people are like, okay, he's blowhard, doesn't know anything, like it's just immediately gone. But if you go in with the approach of, some humility and just be like, you know what, I know a lot about a lot of things. I've got a lot of good wins under my belt, and I'm going to try my best. I'm no better than you, no worse than you. We're all on the same team. With that kind of approach, then when you mess up, it's more like, well, you messed up, you learn from it. Like it's not like that Jeremy's just this big jerk. It's more like, well, he didn't come in here promising us the moon and stars. So, there's still that trust still exists. So I think the last one, the humility, is super important in tech.
Yeah, staying humble. I'm curious, you mentioned the first one was stay hungry, and somebody else actually mentioned that as well as one of their, primary motivators. What does that mean to you when you say stay hungry?
It's just basically you always have to look for the next thing. So in tech, it's really easy, obviously. And I think it applies to any profession, but with tech, it's super easy. Like, what's the next thing coming? What's the next thing I can learn to get better at what I do? And the minute you start telling yourself, well, I know all there is to know, I'm great at this, I don't need to change what I'm doing, I'm just going to sit here and write Java until I retire. That's pretty much the worst thing you could do. So staying hungry to me just means always looking for something new to learn, some way to improve, even if it's just micro improvements in what you're doing every day, just constantly looking for something new. And that takes passion. Like, you have to be passionate about tech. Otherwise that becomes work, right? Like, oh, now I have to learn this new thing, start to be kind of like, oh man, another JavaScript framework. Oh my gosh, But if you're hungry, you're like, oh, new JavaScript framework. I'm going to see what's different about this than the other 10 that I'm working with,
Right, right. I mean, it's going to be a grind sometimes. I don't want to sugarcoat it. Like, sometimes it is. Sometimes when you're hungry, you don't get to eat candy all the time. You got to eat the veggies sometimes.
Absolutely.
But there's even ways to make things that are unappealing a little tastier. So, roast those Brussels sprouts, people. Don't try to steam them. It doesn't work out well.
That's an excellent analogy. I would say Angular 1 was my Brussels sprouts for a little while.
All right.
Where I just wasn't a big fan of what I was doing, but I needed to learn it. Angular 2, however, that changed my mind. That tasted a little more like steak. But at first, yeah, it is. That's a good point. Sometimes it is like, oh, okay, I'll get through this.
All right. And staying honest, I think we established what that's all about. It's just like maintaining that level of trust with other people and owning up to your mistakes and staying humble. I think you've explained that really well also. So your 3 H's, I love them. I'm going to make sure I include those in the description so people can go back to them and maybe glean some career success from that. Anything that you're looking forward to, cool stuff coming up that you want to talk about or pitch?
I'm trying to think about it. I've got a lot of stuff going on for my day job at Pluralsight that I'm very excited about. And a lot of it is we're just going to be building more and more content, trying to get it to be more useful. And so part of what I've spent the last probably 6 months on is really intense studying on content creation, what makes things sticky, what makes things important to people, and it slips my mind now. Course design type things. I guess.
Right. It's learning how to teach.
Yeah, learning how to teach. And so, my end goal is that I'm able to either produce content myself or help people produce content that very succinctly and immediately solves a problem that they came there to find. Like, if they're going to a video or an article with this very specific problem, I want it to solve that problem as quickly as possible. And so I'm realizing how much I don't know about this field.
Well, you just got to stay hungry, Jeremy.
Yeah,
Stay hungry.
that's right. Stay hungry.
All right.
It's exciting.
Awesome. Well, Jeremy Morgan, thank you so much for being a guest today on the Daily Check-In.
Thanks for having me.